So this is very important to understand about the soul and how it's designed. If you understand the fundamental principles of the soul and how it's designed, there's things you can do to change your life to make sure you're living in more harmony with the way the soul's been designed. But if you don't understand the soul properly, and here I'm not saying intellectually understand, am I? Because how did I say earlier you come to understand the truth? It has to be intellectual, which is the small part. And then there was, remember we talked about senses, which is a much larger part than the intellect, because the intellect is like just you could call it like a central processing unit that just, without the inputs, it's really functionally disabled. And you need all the inputs to be working in order for the central processing unit to be able to chuck information here and there and to work things out, right? So it's very important to understand that the brain is, or you could say your mind, is your central processing unit, but it's functionally incomplete without you having your senses. Those senses include your physical body senses, right? But it also includes your spirit body senses, but more importantly includes all your soul senses, which are a superset of the spirit body and physical body senses. So you must use your senses in order to grow and change and learn. And in fact, using your senses is far more important than using your mind. And in fact, because of that, you learn faster using your senses than you do using your mind. So an example of that, let's say I'm a tennis player. I've got a ball coming at me, at about 150 kilometres an hour or thereabouts, right? If there's a powerful server on the other end of that ball, and with a racket, I've got a ball, I've got a very short court that I'm covering, about the size of this room is probably my half of the court, right? So I've got a court that I'm covering, and I'm in my logical mind, I could calculate every single angle, measure it, and so the ball's coming at me, and I get out a tape measure, and I go, that, and where's the ball now? It's gone even before I got out the tape measure, right? Now, the fact is that if you're in your soul, and this is a well-known fact if you're a tennis player, if you're in your soul, you can calculate all of those things, and also at the same time have a will to hit it back in a certain way for the other person not to forget it, not to get to the ball. You can do all of that in less than it takes to think all of what I just said. Why? It's because the mind is not involved when you're playing tennis. That's why. It's not even there. It's all feelings, actuating muscles, pushing you, thought, desires, all that kind of stuff is what's controlling you playing tennis. This is why a lot of people like sport, right? Because they get out of their mind when they're playing. They're completely out of their mind. There's a lot of guys I know in Australian rules footy. They will literally run the equivalent of a marathon every single game. But if you ask them to run a marathon, they'd be absolutely bored and they'd probably not make the distance. Right? Because there's something else controlling their body when they're playing the game. There's all this passion, desire, all involved, and it pushes you way beyond what your mind can push you. Right? And this is a well-known principle in sport. There are certain things you need to do to improve how your body works and so forth by strengthening it and conditioning it and so forth. But there's this undefined thing called talent, right? Which is fundamentally how the person is connected to their soul when they play. And that determines the outcome of every single thing they do on the field. Now, your mind is capable of the measurements, capable of the adjustment, capable of all that, but the time your mind gets engaged, the whole thing's going to be behind you. And this is the limitation of the mind. The soul's mind, the soul has a mind, but it's not like you're thinking. The soul's mind is emotion. That is the mind of the soul. Everything is everything is based around the functioning of that mind, the soul's mind. So when you read the Paget messages where we talk about the mind of the soul, that's our meaning. The emotion of the soul, which governs every single thing you do. You can do it a lot faster if you let the soul do it than if you let your mind do it. Just like the guy playing tennis, if he was only connected to the mind only and nothing to do with the soul, feelings and emotions, he would be unable to respond to a single ball being racketed at him. Make sense?
I don't know if this is a real question, but it's stirring something up to me that I didn't realise, like playing sport, you're in your actual soul, and that potentially, like, we in our soul a lot more than we maybe think we are.
Yes.
And it feels like it might be easier than what I've thought of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And the key is to come to trust all that. You know, the average person doesn't. Their mind gets in the way a lot. You know, your soul often leads you down a path that your mind then rebels against. Now, your mind rebels against it because you have other feelings, emotions, which are injured or sinful, you could say, out of harmony with love, that dominate the mind and dominate what the mind responds to. So remember, the mind is just as good as its inputs. If the inputs are all loving, then the mind's going to respond in a loving manner. If the inputs are all unloving, then the mind's going to respond in an unloving manner. It's quite simple if you think about it. It's like you put bad data in a computer, what happens? Do you get the truth out of it? No, of course. You just get bad data multiplied by the bad data. Right? To actually have a functioning thing that's going to work when it comes to a CPU or a computer, which is fundamentally what your mind is. If you have a thing going on with the mind, you know, talking about the intellect here, if you have that happening with your intellect, it's only going to respond to the data it's given. And remember, the data it's given is not just information. It's information collected by the senses and the emotions and the will and the beliefs. It's not just information collected by the mind reading something. Does that make sense, right? So when your soul is collecting information, it's collecting information from every possible source. So that's information about, like, all of your feelings, all of your emotions, all of your senses. That's all that's coming in. They're all apparatus used by your soul to collect information and then to be able to make decisions, right? Your mind isn't doing that. All your mind is doing is it's just collecting, like, information that you can mentally process, right? Which is a very, very minor subset of the information that's actually available to you. Makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've talked about this for years, but it's kind of...
Sort of a new revelation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is what's very important, is that sometimes you can hear things over and over again with your mind. And then there's no sort of heart opening to the concept, because in your mind you think you get it. And this is a big problem. In your mind you do think you get things. And your mind just goes, I got that, I got that, I got that. And from a soul perspective, you've got none of it. Right? And this is because the apparatus of the soul for learning, your mind is just a tiny minor, the smallest actual part of your learning. And then your senses are a much larger part of your learning. And then your emotions are an even much larger part again of your learning. And your spiritual desires and beliefs and concepts are the biggest part of your learning. So unless all of these things are incorporated into one process of learning, your soul is incapable of really learning. So your mind becomes like you could say it's like a door or a blockage to your learning, right? If you're just using your mind. And this is why when a person becomes more and more intellectually dominant, it's like they're blocked to learning. They can't learn anymore, right? Because they're only learning what the intellect will align with and nothing else. And there's so many things the intellect can't align with. And in fact, there's so many things that the intellect needs the other things in order to align. It needs your emotions, it needs your senses, it needs your beliefs in order to align in harmony with truth. Yeah. Make sense?